Are you ready to embark on an exciting journey back in time, to the brutal and unforgiving world of the German Vikings? Let us dive into the past and uncover the truth about what it would be like if you were born a Viking in Germany during the 8th to 11th century. Get ready for a wild ride, filled with danger, adventure, and a whole lot of boredom. Just kidding. It's gonna be all about the boredom. Stay tuned. But before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our amazing videos. So let's get started and find out why you would not survive as a German Viking. Welcome to the channel. Why you would not survive as a German Viking. You might think being a Viking would be awesome. You'd get to sail around in cool ships, raid villages, and pillage their stuff. But if you were actually born as a German Viking in the 8th to 11th century, you'd quickly realize it's not all meat and honey. Let's talk about a few reasons why you wouldn't last very long as a German Viking. German Vikings were real tough cookies. They were tall, muscular men with a taste for adventure and a thirst for battle. They were also incredibly skilled warriors, able to wield a variety of weapons with deadly accuracy. As a small, skinny person, you'd stick out like a sore thumb among your fellow German Vikings and be an easy target for those looking to pick on the weak. And let's face it, there were plenty of bullies around in those days. So unless you had some serious self-defense skills or a really good hiding spot, you probably wouldn't make it very far as a German Viking. If you did manage to avoid being squished like a bug, you still have to deal with the day-to-day reality of life as a Viking. The work was hard and dangerous, and the living conditions were rough. You'd be expected to help out around the homestead, taking care of the animals, planting crops, and fixing up the longhouse. And if you weren't pulling your weight, the other villagers would likely give you the boot, leaving you to fend for yourself in the wilderness. Good luck with that. The climate of Northern Europe can be brutal and unforgiving, with long, cold winters and short growing seasons. You'd need to be prepared for anything, from blizzards to droughts. And if you couldn't keep up with the demands of the land, you'd likely perish along with your crops. Plus, there were all sorts of natural predators to worry about, from wolves to bears. You'd need to be on guard at all times to protect yourself and your family. So if you were someone who couldn't handle the pressure or the elements, you definitely wouldn't cut it as a German Viking. Now, you might be thinking, hey, maybe I could just run away from all this. Surely there are better places to live, right? Wrong. There was no escape from the Viking way of life. Your village would likely be isolated and difficult to leave, thanks to the rough terrain and lack of roads. Plus, there was always the risk of being attacked by rival clans or bands of marauders. You'd need to be prepared to defend yourself at all times, even when trying to make a fresh start somewhere new. So running away was not a viable option. Let's not forget about the raids. If you were captured during a raid, your life would be miserable. Vikings believed that prisoners of war were there to be ransomed, which meant you'd be treated pretty poorly until your family could pay your way out. Torture was also a common practice to extract information or confessions, and you'd likely be subjected to it at some point during your captivity. In short, life as a Viking prisoner was not for the faint of heart. You'd need to be strong, both physically and mentally, to survive. Otherwise, you wouldn't last long. It's important to remember that the Viking Age wasn't just a time of pillaging and plundering. It was also a time of exploration and discovery. Vikings traveled all over Europe and even to North America long before Christopher Columbus ever set sail. So even if you weren't into the whole raiding thing, you still had to deal with the dangers of long sea. Storms, shipwrecks, and piracy were all common hazards for Vikings, and you'd need to be prepared for anything. So if you were afraid of the water or the unknown, you wouldn't last long as a Viking. Now, let's be honest, being a German Viking wasn't all bad. There were plenty of perks to this way of life, like the freedom, the adventure, and the chance to explore uncharted territories. Vikings also had a deep respect for nature and the environment. and they were known for their sustainable practices, such as crop rotation and They also had a rich culture with a strong sense of community, and you would have had the opportunity to participate in festivals, ceremonies, and other events that celebrated their unique way of life. But despite these perks, it's safe to say that most people would not be able to survive as a German Viking. It took a certain kind of person to thrive in this world, someone who is strong, resourceful, and brave. And honestly, most of us would probably be better off sticking to our cushy modern lives. So let us take a moment to appreciate all the things we have today that make our lives easier than those of the Vikings. For starters, we have modern medicine, which means we don't have to worry about treatable illnesses or injuries that could have ended a Viking's life. We also have access to clean water and nutritious food, which were always in short supply for Vikings. And let's not forget about the comfort of modern conveniences like indoor plumbing, central air, and Netflix. Yeah, we're pretty lucky to live in the time and place we do. Now let us take a closer look at what a typical day in the life of a German Viking might have looked like. Let's call our Viking Olaf. Olaf woke up early, as the sun had barely begun to peek over the horizon. He stretched his stiff muscles and yawned, then got out of bed and started to tend to his morning ablution. He splashed water on his face, brushed his teeth with a simple wooden toothbrush, and put on a fresh tunic. Breakfast was a simple affair. Olaf ate bread, cheese, and fruit while he watched his children playing in the yard. His wife, Astrid, was already up and about, tending to the animals and preparing the house for the day ahead. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ola began his work in the fields. He and his fellow Vikings grew barley, wheat, and oats, as well as vegetables like cabbage and carrots. The soil was rich and the crops plentiful. But the work was hard and long hours were required to keep everything running smoothly. Around noon, Olaf and his fellow farmers took a break for lunch. They sat on a nearby hill and shared stories and jokes as they ate their packed lunches of bread and cheese. After lunch, the work continued. Olaf spent the afternoon harvesting crops and tending to his animals. As the sun began its slow descent, Olaf and his family gathered together for dinner. They ate hearty meals of roasted meat, potatoes, and vegetables, and they told stories about their day and made plans for the next. After dinner, Olaf spent some time mending his tools and preparing them for the next day. He also took out his axe and threw it at the nearby tree, aiming for the center of the bull's eye he had carved earlier. Once his tools were sharpened and his chores were done, Olaf spent the evening with his family, playing games and relaxing after a long day. He told stories of his adventures as a young warrior, fighting alongside his fellow Vikings against rival clans and exploring new lands across the sea. His children listened with wide eyes, hanging on every word. Before long, it was time for bed. Olaf and Astrid tucked their children in and said their prayers. Then they crawled into their cozy bed, made of straw and furs, and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of adventures yet to come. Life as a Viking was not for the faint of heart. It took a certain kind of person to survive and thrive in this world. But for those who were up for the challenge, it was an exciting and rewarding way of life. Alright, now that you've learned all about the German Vikings, it's time to test your knowledge. Take our quiz and see how much you remember. That's all for today, folks. We hope you enjoyed learning about the German Vikings and what it would be like to live in their world. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time for more historical adventures. Until then, stay curious and keep learning.